All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Michelle Affanato. Michelle, how's it going?
Going great. It's going great.
Wonderful, wonderful. Massachusetts, it's about to get real beautiful out there pretty soon here.
It is. I love fall in Massachusetts. It's probably like my favorite season
Yeah. It's really good. It's like, not too hot, not too cold or anything. Just perfect, perfect
and very
temperature.
colorful.
Nice, awesome. So, Michelle, let's dive into a little bit of your area of expertise. But before we get into that, can you tell us how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, I've been in dentistry since I was 15. Ironically, like my mom was like, you need a job. So she just called the local dentist and I went in and I started pulling and filing charts on the weekends. Then kind of learned the front desk, worked my way up, went to school to be a dental assistant, but was cross trained. So I knew the front, I knew the clinical. And I kind of like worked my way up and out of an office. So I was office manager. I've done a lot of things. And finally I was like, I think there's more for me. I need to branch out and help people, not just one office, but multiple
Mhm.
offices. So I did consulting for a little while, just here in New England with existing practices and acquisitions, but I was really drawn to the startups. And so I left that for a little while. And then I went to work at a local bank and did the financing for startups. I
Hmm.
was kind of the person inside that was making sure they could repay the loan, kind of tracking the
Yeah.
metrics for them. And then I went to a company, I'm sure a lot of people know, Ideal Practices, that just worked with startups. So I worked there for a while and got really in tune with what the startup doctors are looking for, what they need to have a successful practice.
Mhm.
And then most recently, about 2 years ago, I went out on my own. So now I can serve not just startups, but anybody looking to be like a first time practice owner, whether it's a
Yeah.
startup or an acquisition.
So you've been in dentistry for a while.
A lot of years.
Yeah, for a minute now. Awesome. So then you are now working specifically as a consultant for startups and acquisitions, or?
That is correct. I mean, I do a lot of team training too for administrative team members that come on board that have no dental office experience, getting them to understand. I actually have a boot camp that I do for like a 2 week boot camp that I do to get them onboarded so they have a good foundation when they get into
Mhm.
the practice.
So then, Michelle, what's your area of expertise?
My area of expertise is working with the dentist to help them understand the business side of the practice, right? They go to school to be clinicians and great clinicians, but all of a sudden they want to own their own practice, and that's a whole other world for them.
Yeah, it's super different. And I remember when I went out there one time to with Ideal Practices to speak a little bit. You knew a lot. You can do a lot. Yeah.
I can
So
do a
if you don't
lot.
mind me asking, what specifically were you doing? That was it like just building their analytics or the team training that you were doing or?
When I was with Idle Practices, I did a little bit of everything, like the training, helping them, hire the right staff, discussion with like marketing, internal, external, ground marketing, setting up the systems and protocols, training the staff to make sure that everybody knew what they were doing on opening day, right? It's not just about opening those doors and seeing patients on the first day. You want to have an excellent patient experience as well as like, some solid systems. You want them raving about you and writing that 5-star review like, wow, I can't believe this was their first day.
Mhm.
So, and then working with the doctor too to understand the metrics of the practice. A startup is unique and every startup is different. So, working with Idle Practices, I probably opened close to 200 startups. And I can tell you there were not two that were alike. Every
Oh,
doctor's
really?
vision is different. They want
Mm.
to do things a little bit differently. Their philosophy is different. So, you have to be able to adapt to that and help them support their vision.
Can you break it down for us and tell us what do we need to have in place for opening day?
Yes. I think it's really important that you're hiring team members and it's the appropriate amount of team members. You can't overstaff. So having team members that have experience, but not too much experience. I kind of like the 1 to 5 years of experience because they have a little bit of knowledge, but they're also willing to adapt to your way. I'm not saying that somebody with 10 or 20 years of experience isn't going to be great for your practice, but they tend to like to do things their way.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, what I have found with the younger doctors is they try to run the practice and it's not the doctor's practice. So, making sure you have the right people on board and taking the time to make sure everybody is trained before you start seeing patients. A lot of times you get that certificate of occupancy and you're really excited. You're like, I got rent that I got to pay. I have bills that are coming in. I got to start seeing patients. But if you don't take the time to properly train your team, it's not going to be a great patient experience. And you could be losing money if they're not billing correctly, if they're not answering the phones correctly and you're not getting the patient scheduled. So I typically say take 2 weeks, and it doesn't have to be 14 days. But if your office is going to be open 3 days a week to start, it's 6 days to train them, the clinical side and the administrative side, so that when you open your doors, it doesn't feel like it's the first day.
So then let's rewind a little bit. I just got the certificate of occupancy, and then I'm like, okay, now I need to start. I got like one person that I just hired that I think they're fantastic and everything. How far out should I start? Like, okay, so opening day is, rent's coming up. The contractor had so many delays. I'm already starting. My free rent's almost over, right? Kind of thing. How far out should we say, okay, opening day is this? I have one team member right now who's learning Open Dental or Oryx, right? How do we do this now?
I always go backwards from your anticipated opening day, right? You get the construction timeline, and you want to make sure that you're staying in constant contact with them to make sure that there's no delays or whatever. But we go with the anticipated opening day, and then I go back 8 weeks. That's when you should start hiring, because it takes probably a month, maybe a little bit longer to get somebody on board. They got to give 2 weeks notice if they're working somewhere else. You want them hired and ready to work for you 2 weeks before you're ready to start seeing patients. That way you can get trained, you're answering the phones, you're getting patients scheduled, they're learning everything like the software, the phone system, insurance stuff, they're getting that all ready for you. So I have seen, I do watch the Facebook groups, I watch a lot of this, and I do see some doctors panic. I'm opening next week and I don't have my staff. What am I supposed to do? It's better to start sooner, 8 weeks or so. And even if you're delayed, usually if you're in good communication with this employee, you can let them know, and then they can even delay giving their notice if needed.
Gotcha. Okay. So then can you give us like a checklist? What needs to be trained? What needs to be, let's just say, okay, I want to be super confident, or at least 90% confident tomorrow opening day. What needs to be on that checklist?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need software training, and I require that for everybody, even if they've used the software before, because chances are they never got properly trained by your trainer and have learned like some bad habits along the way. So everybody gets software training. You want them trained on telephone skills, how you want the phones answered, what information to be collected. You want them trained on scheduling, presenting your financial protocols, case presentation. If you're working with any third-party financing companies, you want them to have training on that. You want them to have training on the insurances. What are you in network with? Are you going to be using a company to outsource eligibility and benefits? If so, they're part of the team too. And you guys have to talk about like, how are you going to communicate and get the information over to them back and forth? You also have to be trained like clinically. They need to know how to use the sterilization area, how to do maintenance on the units, on the mechanical equipment. You want to make sure that your x-rays are working. Nothing worse than day one going to take an x-ray and like nothing is set up properly. And I usually recommend that you bring in a patient, a close friend or family member, to come in and that you can practice this all on. You check them in, you go through the flow. If you're using Modento or NextHealth or any of those like third-party ones, like how can they fill out the forms? What is the ease of use for the patients? You check them in, you do an office tour if you want to, you get them seated, you do like an exam, x-rays, and if you want to do a prophy, make sure the handpiece works, go ahead and do a prophy, but you're not going to go do an implant on them. You're going to do something simple to make sure you have everything you need and that all of your equipment is working. You check them out, you collect a payment from them, you do everything that you would do with a regular patient, so you've kind of got the like first aid jitters out of the way when you're seeing this patient.
Okay, so like a rehearsal, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So it's software, telephone, scheduling, case presentation, insurances, clinically, x-rays, right? Making sure all the tech is in the clinical side doing good. Then you want to practice all of that with a new patient. Do we do any type of, also we're going to rehearse like internal marketing, like how to ask for reviews and things like that? Or
Yes, yes. I mean, there's so many things to name off. Like, yes,
Hmm.
definitely asking for reviews, extremely important. And one other thing I stress is when they're answering that phone, they need to get that referral source. How did that patient hear about us? Because you're doing a lot of different marketing things when you're opening your practice, and we need to know what's working. A lot of the marketing agencies, they have great tracking in their
Hmm.
dashboards, but they really only track until the patient makes the phone call. They don't know like if the patient showed up or what your treatment plan is for them. So it's really important that every single new patient comes in, the referral source is entered into the software.
So you put in the referral source, like let's just say, oh, I heard you from like Michelle, right? A friend of mine who works downstairs from you or whatever. And then do you also track how much treatment they put down?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, why?
Absolutely. Because you want to see, like, especially if it's word of mouth, that's one thing. But if you're paying marketing dollars or you're taking the time to do some of these ground marketing things, you want to see what's working. So, for example, I had an office a long time ago that before opening day, she had over 200 patients on her schedule, but she was sending out postcards offering, a $59 new patient special. And what we found was a lot of those patients, they were coming in for the first visit, but they weren't scheduling their recare appointments and they weren't scheduling treatment. They were kind of bouncing to the next office that had a special for them. So great that you had 200 patients when you opened the door, but you weren't able to retain them. Now, I also had another office that sent out postcards and said to me, Michelle, I think it was a failure. I think the campaign was a failure. I only got 6 patients. But I looked at it and I said, from those 6 patients, you got $35,000 worth of treatment. So they were patients that came in and actually needed something and came back for that work. So you have to look at it both ways. You got to track and say, like, it's not just the quantity of patients that are coming through the door, but it's the quality of that patient.
Hmm. Yeah, me personally, I'd rather have like less but more. You know what I mean? Like less patients, less stress, but like they care and the quality than a ton of them. And they're like, why discounts and stuff like that? So, okay,
Yeah.
this is a good checklist then. Now, if we were to say, Michelle, I need you to hire the people for this. How many people do we need for this? Let's just say one has like, I need you to hire as minimal as possible, and then one's like, I don't care. Hire as many as you need.
So I always look and I talk to the doctor about their vision too, because I ask a lot of them, are you willing to do any hygiene in the beginning, if it's a general practice or a pedo practice, right? Are you willing to do hygiene? I have some doctors that say, yeah, I'm totally willing to do it. And I have other doctors that say, like, absolutely not. So that doctor there is going to have to hire more people. Like, you're probably going to need a hygienist in there, but a doctor that's willing to do some hygiene, even if it's for a couple months, you're going to save a little bit of money. Now, there's a big debate on this. So, could you hire a hygienist and maybe have more production coming from the hygienist and, be able to do more same-day dentistry? Yes. Right now, hygienists are commanding a very large salary. And
Mhm.
as a startup, your budget is very tight in the beginning. Working capital is very lean. So, that is a really personal choice on the hygienist that I would have with the doctor. But typically, it would be one front office person and one assistant to start. I would also, again, it depends on the doctor. What are they doing for marketing? Right now, I'm working with a pediatric dentist in Colorado. She's not opening until January, like end of December, beginning of January. She had a very unique situation and people are flocking to her. She already has 200 people on her list. She's going to events. She's not open until January. She's doing events. She's already going to pediatricians and general dentists and everything. So in her case, we're going to need more than one front office and one assistant because
Mhm.
we already know. And these people, they're holding out. They know she's not opening and they're like, we don't want to go anywhere else. We want you. Kind of followed
Mhm.
her from a previous location. So you have to hear the story of the doctor and what they're willing to put in ahead of time to ensure that they have good patients. But a rule of thumb would be one front office person and one assistant. And if they were both cross trained, that's a bonus.
Okay, gotcha. So one front, one office. Yeah, so one can worry about the clinical side, one can worry about the front, like the telephone, the scheduling, case presentation, right? And then so forth. Now, people listening to this, not all everybody, we have some listeners, right? We have a lot of listeners, but one that let's just say they're listening and then they're like, "Ah, opening day has passed. Can you do this on like a random, like, hey, open house day kind of thing?"
Absolutely. Any of this. So if you opened your office and you didn't do all this training or you didn't do all this marketing, most startups have time in their schedule. Most startups are not completely full. So we have time and you block it in your schedule. So there's no such thing as like downtime in a startup. If you have open time in your schedule, you're going to do marketing. You're going to get out there. You're going to see what events you can do. You're going to make TikToks and stuff for social media. You have to use that time to do that. In addition, if you didn't have the time to spend with your team in training, you utilize that too. It's never too late to start to do that, but you have to do it.
Gotcha. So you're kind of setting yourself on the right foot when we have the first day, right? But if the first day has already passed and we're listening to this episode now, it will be like an open house kind of day, right? We can kind of set it up for that.
Yep.
So then how would you recommend once we're open and we're listening to this and we want to do this, would we follow the same protocols or how would we change it?
I would follow like the same checklist, but it might be a little bit different because now you're open. So some of the things would have to be a little bit modified a bit, but you could use that checklist as a guide to make sure that you felt solid in each of those areas.
Gotcha. What things would have to be modified?
So ahead of time, right? We don't always know. We think something should go a certain way. Financial protocols, for example. A lot of people now are asking for deposits to schedule an appointment. So maybe in the beginning, we said, we're going to ask for a $200 deposit for somebody to schedule for us. But now you've been open for 2 weeks and you're kind of finding like, oh, well, people aren't scheduling treatment because we're asking for this $200. So now you have to reevaluate that system and say like, okay, maybe $100 is better. Maybe we need to, change this. Or, this is how we're answering the phone. We thought that would work from the beginning, but we're noticing a lot of people are saying, oh, well, let me call you back instead of actually scheduling. We'd want to modify that.
Okay. So little adjustments here and there that can work for you. When it comes to that, the deposit, it's interesting you brought that up. Have you seen that work? Like where it's like, hey, we need a $200 deposit first or...
It's a little bit tough with new patients, but new patients are the ones you probably need it the most from because they have the highest no-show rates. So, but definitely I have offices that like it's mandatory if they want to schedule a restorative appointment and reserve time in a doctor's schedule, they have to put a deposit down. And that deposit's non-refundable. So if they don't show up, it's like their cancellation fee. If they do show up, it gets applied to whatever their out-of-pocket expense would be.
Interesting. Did you notice like it declined, but the quality of the patient showed? Or was it more like nothing changed?
No, it definitely helps. So there's a couple of ways you can go about it. And there's probably like a whole episode that we could talk about just that. Because a lot of startups, when they open, are, they take a lot of insurances, right? We want butts in the chair. So we do take, more insurances than an established practice that might be trying to phase out of insurance. So if they're doing that, a hygiene appointment is typically going to be covered 100% by insurance. So it's hard to get a patient to put a deposit down for something that is supposed to be covered 100% from insurance. So I tell everyone, start with the restorative. Start with the restorative or scaling and replating because they would have a copayment for that. And you'll notice the people that put money down, they're less likely to no-show unless it's something really, really major. The people that don't put anything down, those are the ones that like they just don't see that value in it. And you do see a higher no-show rate with them.
How much do you recommend we charge?
It depends on the area. I have some offices I would not do less than $50. I have some offices, the majority of them do like $100 or $150. But I do know of a few offices that I've worked with that ask for 20% of the procedure. So like if you're doing an implant or like, a bunch of treatment, it could be a couple $100s that they have to put down.
How can we deal with not conflicts, but the people who are like, are you serious? I didn't do it last time. Why do I have to do it this time? Like, what's going on? How do we do
Well, that's why it's great. A lot of startup doctors will say, I don't want to do it because I don't want to upset any patients. No, you have to do it from the beginning because you're setting the rules and the tone. But people have to put deposits down. Like when I go to get a massage, I have to put a deposit down to reserve my time with her, or like hair salons. Like it's becoming more common now. So I don't see much pushback from patients. The only pushback would be like, I see some people saying like, oh, maybe we are charging too much. So let's reduce it a little bit. But people are willing to do it because they have to pay it anyways. And then it helps the office know if somebody can't put down $100 deposit for this crown, are they really going to follow through or be able to pay for this crown?
Yeah. Meaning, are they serious or are they just like, yeah, I'll do it right now?
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. That's very interesting. So then there is no script really, right? When it comes to someone who's holding back and be like, wait, hold up. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put a deposit. I'm going to show up, but I'm not going to put a deposit down. Shouldn't my insurance cover it, right? Like, don't they Is there a script for that stuff or no?
I usually just let them know we are reserving 90 minutes, 2 hours in the doctor's schedule. And yes, you do have some insurance benefits to help you towards that, but it won't cover 100% for this type of procedure. So we do require that you pay, a $100 deposit, which will go towards that out-of-pocket expense. So when you come in next visit, like you only have to bring $400 for that visit. Most people are fine with it, but it does take, like, if you have a staff member that's worked in an office previously that never had to ask for it, it does take a lot of training and role playing it out for them to be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I would totally want to role play, because I can totally see a staff member being like, let's just say Michelle came in, said to do this, they do it, but the staff member maybe feels like uncomfortable saying that or doing it, asking for money up front. And then they kind of put themselves in the shoes and they're like, I would never do that. I would never pay. You know what I mean? So I don't know why we're making them pay and then they tell the doctor that. And then the doctor's like, well, she's a good staff member. He's a good staff member. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I try to head that off during the interview process, kind of talk to them about it. How do you feel? Like, we do some high-end dentistry. How do you feel about collecting money from people? We're going to be asking for deposits. Is that something that you would feel comfortable with? I make it part of the interview process so you know ahead of time if they're going to be, because I have run across quite a few front office people that will say, like, they have a hard time selling treatment or getting the deposit because they know themselves they could never afford it or wouldn't do that. So you have to hire people that have the right mindset towards it.
Okay. What if they've already been, what if they're working already? They're working and everything like that. And then they're listening to this episode and then we're going to implement the deposit. We try, but then they're like, doctor, I would never pay. I don't know why we're making, why we're doing this, How do we deal with it then?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge. And because if they're a good employee, like, all around, and this is the one thing, I think if you sit down and really explain to them why, right? A lot of employees, they have no idea why we're implementing things. We just tell them we need to do this. So if we explain to them why and help them overcome that doubt that they have, most likely they're going to do it when they understand,
Yeah. So it's kind of like, be patient, take the time to talk to them.
Yeah, because like I said, a lot of times in dentistry, I've noticed this, like working in an office and even, working with doctors, the doctors, will just come in and say, like, we're changing our policy and this is what we're doing. And the staff just is like, oh, okay, I guess, but they don't understand why. So if we explain to them, like, hey, our no-shows are up a lot. Like, whenever somebody doesn't show up for this appointment, we lose, $400 or $500. Like, we want people to come in here that are going to be serious about the treatment, because there's a lot of people that do want to get in. And if this person isn't serious, they're holding up a spot for somebody else that could get in. When you start explaining it like that to the team members, then they're kind of like, I get it. And it's also to charge $100 or $50 cancellation fee. Like, that's hard to collect. A lot of people won't pay it, and a lot of doctors just end up writing it off anyways. This way, we already know that patient is serious.
Oh, so instead of charging the cancellation fee, yeah, you know what I mean? Do you believe in that or no? Do you say, like, no, don't ever charge a cancellation fee?
I feel like in some circumstances it's warranted, but to me, a $50 cancellation fee is not going to deter somebody, most patients from it. For me, I would rather say, like, I'm really sorry that you can't make the appointment today because our next availability isn't until December. Them not being able to get in right away hurts more than them paying $50.
Interesting. Okay. But the deposit pulls that back a lot.
Exactly. Because we say to them, like, if you don't show up or you don't give, 48 hours notice, you do forfeit that deposit, and you'd have to put another deposit to come in.
Oh, so double deposit. Interesting.
It works.
Yeah. I like that. I like that better than the cancellation policy. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So then, Michelle, what can a dentist or practice owner do today to improve their marketing or business?
Marketing, as you know, what works for one doctor does not work for every doctor. So you have to be willing to try. You have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone in order to do it. And the biggest thing that I tell doctors is, when you start doing something and you see it's working and all of a sudden you have an influx of patients, every doctor tends to do this. They're like, I'm going to take my foot off the gas pedal and I'm going to stop doing marketing because I have too many patients right now. And then I get a phone call of, my schedule is sparse and, like, I don't have any patients. So when you find something that works, whether it be sending out mailers, maybe it's going to an event at a senior center or an apartment complex, or going to the schools, whatever it is that works for you, keep doing it. Just keep doing it and don't take your foot off the gas pedal, because once you do that, especially in that first year of a startup or even a first year of acquiring a practice, the second you do that, you will see it slow down. So you need to make sure that you stay on top of it.
Interesting. Okay. And now these next questions are just to get into the head of someone who isn't totally involved on the clinical side of dentistry, right? What would you like to see more from a dentist?
Oh, that's a good question.
Hmm.
From a staff perspective and being somebody that worked both clinical and administrative when I was in there, I would love for the dentist to try to understand the administrative staff a little better, right? They click with the clinical staff, the assistants, the hygienists. They know what they're supposed to be doing all day, but they don't always know what the front office team, what that administrative team is doing. So I think like their tendency is to kind of hang out with the clinical team more. I think they need to hang out with the administrative team more and learn more about what goes on up there.
Do you feel like there's a disconnect or something like
A
that?
lot of times, the complaint that I hear, I swear I hear it from every single office, or front office person, office manager will be, he always picks on us. Like we're working so hard all day long and the phones have been ringing. We've got patients checking in and out. We're calling insurance companies. And we literally took 5 minutes for us to just talk for 5 minutes. And they came up here and said like, what are you doing? Why isn't my schedule full? Like, and they pick on them then. So I want them to understand like they are busy for the majority of the day, like, and everybody should have a chance to take a break, but really understanding what they're doing up there, going back a little bit to the training, I truly believe that every doctor that owns their own practice should know how to schedule appointments, should know how to submit insurance claims, check benefits, post payments, because gives them a better appreciation for what is happening up front, but also, with the way the staffing is right now, you could be left by yourself and you should know how to do all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Interesting. Okay. So a better appreciation for, and how do you suggest we can do that? Like, do we have front office team meetings only, or let's just say the practice is up and running already? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how do you recommend we get a closer, I guess, understanding of that?
Yeah. I actually kind of like for the whole team to do something like, walk a day in my shoes kind of thing. Like sit up here with me so that you can see what I'm doing. And just like I say to administrative team members, like a lot of them don't have a clinical background. So when they're talking about treatment or understanding a schedule, they don't really know what's going on. So I tell them like, go in the back, watch them do a crown prep, watch them do an extraction, watch them do this so you have a better understanding of it. So yes, administrative team meetings, or just like if there's downtime for the doctor to sit up there and kind of get an understanding, ask the team, show me how you check benefits, or show me how you enter the insurance in there, or show me how you post a payment.
Gotcha. So a day in the shoe. I like that. I like that a lot. And then right now, what do you hate or dislike about dentistry?
Honestly, the thing that I hate about dentistry or dislike the most is, and I know our listeners might be some actual like staff members, so I don't want to offend anybody, but I feel like the doctors are being like held hostage by the team. They're demanding very high salaries, and there's so many people looking for staff members that like they're poaching people, or like they're willing to offer the world. And these startup practices, these small private practices are like, I can't afford these people, or I'm just going to have to keep paying them and sacrifice something else because I need good team members. I don't like that has happened in this industry.
Yeah. Well, how are you seeing, I guess, like your clients or you yourself, like how are they kind of combating this?
It depends on the situation. Every doctor is different. I was with somebody earlier this week that's like, whatever they ask for, I'm just going to give it to them because they're really good and I can't afford to lose them. And then I have another doctor that's like, I can't afford it, so I'm probably going to lose them, and I'm going to have to hire somebody that has like little to no experience and train them because I can't afford the higher salaries. So it just depends on the situation.
Gotcha. So some people just bite the bullet and do it. Yeah, and some people have to still stick with, because I've seen that some practices where they're like, yeah, it's just we're so tight. I have nobody who can do anything else, right? Like there's nothing left. It's a real tight team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand that. And then right now, what do you love about dentistry?
I think it's what I've loved like always about dentistry is just like, I love how caring the doctors are. They have the biggest, kindest hearts. They want to do everything for their teams. They want to do everything for the patients. And I feel like it's a little bit to a fault sometimes, right? But I just feel like everything that is going on in the industry, like the challenges that we're facing, the doctors, at least the ones that I've been working with, the passion that they have to make sure that they take great care of their patients and their team. That's what I love about it. It's why, like, I feel like I never work a day in my life because I talk to these doctors and it makes me happy every time I get off the phone with them.
That's good. And then what needs to change, in your opinion, for people, the general population, to be more open to dentistry?
Yeah, they need to get out of this dental insurance mindset because it is not. It is not insurance, right? It's the coupon or something with a lot of restrictions. It's there to help them towards the cost of treatment, not cover everything like medical insurance does or car insurance does. And if the public were better educated on that, I think it would help a lot in dentistry. We'd be able to sell more treatment to patients. We'd be, less stressed out about it because the doctors wouldn't be stressing about, I have to stay in network or else I'll lose all these patients. They could go out of network and get reimbursed higher. So I wish that there was something out there to educate the patients a little bit more on what the dental benefit really is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's like a forever coupon, right? As long as the patient has it, they're always going to continue to. How do you think we can start doing that then, in your opinion? How can we start educating the patients? Just like every patient that comes in, we talk to them about it, or?
You can talk to the patients, and a lot of offices do that, especially when they offer like a membership plan, because they can compare it. You're paying this much because patients don't know how much they're paying for their dental insurance because, right, if it gets automatically deducted from your paycheck, you don't know really how much you're paying towards it, and showing them like, well, but this is what you're getting for benefits, but you can only have 2 of these a year, or like this, you can only have done once every 5 years, or the frequency limits. There's a lot of limitations there. The other thing that offices do, or I have some offices do, is like some of the larger employers in their area, if they connect with the HR departments, they can go in and talk to the team and start like explaining, like, this is the plans that you're being offered by your employer. Let me explain it a little bit more in detail how it would work in a dental office for you.
Yeah, that's true. I think whenever we do like a lunch and learn, or like, the senior citizen home strategy, or a lot of these other strategies where we're talking with, even like at hotels, right? We're talking to the employees and we get to the Q&A section of it, right? Of the presentation or whatever, like any questions or concerns, right? Sometimes the whole presentation is just questions. 90% of all of them are just like about insurance. It's all insurance. So the doctor's even like, why am I here? I should have I was ready to talk about implants, but my front office should have came, right? And talked about this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Interesting how many of them, you know what I mean, are like, does my insurance cover this? What if I have this? Last time I tried to go in here and it didn't cover it. So it's more of that stuff.
Yeah. And for the patients to understand, like, just because a doctor is not in network does not mean they can't go to that doctor. 99% of the PPO dental plans allow you to see an out-of-network provider. And they just need to understand like what that means. So I think it's really like, I wish we could, put something together for like all patients out there, like a news thing, a documentary, like something, a Netflix original, just explaining like dental insurance. It's great because it will help you towards the cost of treatment, but it's not there like medical insurance. You don't pay your $50 copayment and they cover everything else.
Yeah. It's a whole different type of insurance. It's a coupon, like you said. Yeah. All right, Michelle, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Sure. You can check out my website, which is affinitymanagement.co, or you can email me directly, michelle@affinitymanagement.co. And then you can also find me on social media, Instagram and Facebook. Just look at Michelle Affinity Management.
Okay, affinity. Is it affinity because of Affanato?
A little.
Is it, okay.
And an affinity for my love of dentistry.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Because I was thinking that right now when you said that. I was like,
well, and the AM, the Affinity Management, Michelle Affanato, the AM reversed.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there was some thought into it then. Interesting. Yes. Awesome, Michelle. Thank you so much. And guys, that's going to be in the show notes below, so definitely check it out. And thank you so much, Michelle, for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you for having me.